Picture this. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you rinse with mouthwash, you feel fresh, you feel clean, you feel like you've done everything right. And yet, somewhere deep in your gums, something is still happening. Something you can't see. Something that doesn't sting yet, doesn't bleed yet, doesn't hurt yet. But it's there, quietly working, quietly spreading. Because here's a truth almost nobody tells you: mouthwash cools the surface, but it barely touches what's happening underneath. And by the time you notice the warning signs, a little blood when you spit, a tooth that feels loose, a smell that won't go away no matter how many mints you chew, the damage has usually been building for months, sometimes years. This is the story of something ancient, something almost forgotten, that people used long before toothpaste tubes and mouthwash bottles ever existed. A simple oil, something you probably already have in your kitchen right now. And what it does to the bacteria living in your gums is the reason dentists across the world are starting to pay attention again, after centuries of this practice being pushed aside in favor of shinier, more modern products. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why so many people over 50 are quietly switching back to something their grandparents once used every single morning, and why it might matter more for you than for almost anyone else. Let's talk honestly for a moment about what happens to your mouth as you get older. It's not just about a stray gray hair or stiffer knees. Your gums change too. The tissue that once hugged your teeth tightly, protecting the roots and bone underneath, naturally starts to recede. Saliva production, which acts like a built-in rinse cleaning your mouth all day long, slows down. Combine that with decades of eating, drinking coffee or tea, maybe smoking at some point in your life, or simply the wear and tear of thousands of meals, and your mouth becomes the perfect environment for bacteria to settle in and multiply. This isn't something to feel ashamed of. It's simply biology. But it does mean that after 50, your gums need more attention, not less. And this is exactly where most people get it wrong. They assume brushing twice a day and swishing some blue or green liquid around their mouth for 30 seconds is protection enough. It isn't. Because most commercial mouthwashes are built to kill bacteria on the surface, in the open spaces of your mouth. But the real danger isn't sitting out in the open. It's hiding in the tiny pockets between your teeth and gums, in places a liquid rinse simply cannot reach with enough force or enough time to make a difference. Now here's where it gets interesting. Long before pharmacies existed, before dental clinics, before fluoride was even discovered, people in ancient India, in parts of the Middle East, and across various regions of Europe were doing something remarkably simple every morning. They would take a spoonful of oil, usually sesame oil or coconut oil, and swish it slowly around their mouth for several minutes, sometimes as long as 15 or 20 minutes, before spitting it out. This practice is often called oil pulling, and while it sounds almost too simple to matter, the science behind why it works is genuinely fascinating. Oil, especially natural oils like coconut and sesame, has a unique property. Bacteria have a fatty outer membrane, and oil is naturally attracted to fat. When you swish oil slowly through your mouth, it doesn't just sit there. It works its way into the tiny crevices between your teeth, along your gum line, and into those hidden pockets where bacteria love to hide. And because bacteria are drawn to the fat molecules in the oil, they essentially get pulled out of their hiding spots and trapped inside the oil itself. When you spit that oil out, you're not just spitting out saliva. You're spitting out thousands, sometimes millions of bacteria that were clinging to your gums moments before. This is completely different from how mouthwash works. Mouthwash relies on alcohol or chemical antiseptics to kill bacteria on contact, but it only works where the liquid actually touches, and it only works for the few seconds you're swishing it around. Oil pulling works more like a slow, gentle magnet, patiently drawing bacteria out over several minutes, rather than trying to blast them in a few seconds. And because you're not using alcohol, you're not drying out your mouth or stripping away the healthy bacteria your mouth actually needs to stay balanced. That's an important point many people miss. Your mouth isn't supposed to be sterile. It's supposed to be balanced. Killing everything indiscriminately, which is what strong alcohol-based mouthwashes tend to do, can actually disrupt that balance and leave your mouth vulnerable in other ways. Oil pulling, when done consistently, seems to work with your mouth's natural chemistry rather than against it. Coconut oil in particular has drawn a lot of attention in recent years because of a compound it contains called lauric acid. Lauric acid has natural properties that make it uncomfortable for certain harmful bacteria to survive, particularly the kind linked to plaque buildup, bad breath, and early gum inflammation. Several small studies conducted over the past decade have looked at people who practiced oil pulling daily for a few weeks, and many of them showed a noticeable reduction in plaque and a decrease in the specific bacteria most associated with gum disease. Now, I want to be honest with you here, because you deserve honesty rather than exaggeration. This isn't a magic cure that erases decades of gum damage overnight. If you already have significant gum disease, a swollen jaw, or teeth that feel loose, that's a sign your body needs professional care, not just a home remedy, and no video on the internet should ever replace a proper checkup when something feels seriously wrong. But for the everyday buildup, the low-grade inflammation, the bacteria quietly working away beneath the surface that most people don't even realize they have, this old practice offers something genuinely valuable, especially as a daily habit alongside brushing and flossing, not instead of them. Think about your gums for a second, the way you'd think about the soil in a garden. If the soil underneath is unhealthy, it doesn't matter how nice the flowers look on top, because the roots are what determine whether everything survives long-term. Your teeth are the same way. You can have a bright, white smile and still have quiet trouble happening below the gum line, because that's where the real battle takes place. Bacteria don't announce themselves loudly at first. They build colonies slowly, forming a sticky film called plaque, which hardens into something called tartar if it isn't removed. And tartar is stubborn. Once it forms, brushing alone can't remove it. This is why so many people over 50 find themselves, seemingly out of nowhere, being told at a dental visit that they have the early stages of gum disease, even though they brush every single day and always thought that was enough. It's not that they did anything wrong. It's that brushing and rinsing simply weren't designed to reach where the real problem was hiding. This is exactly why the ancient habit of oil pulling has quietly made its way back into modern routines, especially among people who've already tried everything else and are looking for something that actually addresses the root of the problem, rather than just masking the smell for a few hours. The process itself couldn't be simpler, and that simplicity is part of why it lasted for thousands of years across so many different cultures. You take about a tablespoon of oil. Coconut oil is the most popular choice today because of its pleasant taste and that lauric acid we talked about, though sesame oil remains a traditional favorite in many households too. You put it in your mouth first thing in the morning, before eating or drinking anything, because your mouth has spent all night collecting bacteria while you slept, which is also why your breath tends to be at its worst right when you wake up. Then you simply swish it around gently, moving it between your teeth, along your gums, under your tongue, for somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes. It sounds like a long time, and honestly, the first few times you try it, it will feel long. But most people find that once they get into a rhythm, doing it while they shower, or get dressed, or even just sitting quietly for a few minutes, it becomes an easy part of the morning, rather than a chore. The most important part, and the part people often get wrong, is what happens at the end. You do not swallow the oil. This isn't a step to skip or rush through. Remember, that oil is now full of the bacteria it pulled out of your mouth, so swallowing it would simply put those bacteria right back into your system. Instead, you spit it out, ideally into a trash can rather than your sink, because coconut oil can solidify and clog pipes over time. After spitting it out, rinse your mouth thoroughly with warm water, and then go ahead and brush your teeth as you normally would. Many people notice something within just the first week of doing this consistently. Their gums feel less tender when they floss. The persistent morning breath that no amount of mouthwash seemed to fully fix starts to fade. Some people even report that their teeth feel smoother, almost the way they feel right after a professional cleaning, because the oil has been quietly lifting away the sticky film that built up overnight. Now, you might be wondering why, if this is so effective, it isn't something everyone already knows about or does. Part of the answer is simply that modern life moved fast, and quick solutions like mouthwash and whitening strips became more appealing than a 20-minute morning ritual. We live in a world that wants results in seconds, not minutes, and a practice that requires patience naturally gets pushed aside in favor of things that promise instant freshness, even if that freshness is only surface deep. But there's a growing shift happening, especially among people who've spent years cycling through different products, different mouthwashes, different toothpaste brands, all promising to fix bad breath or bleeding gums, only to find themselves back at square one a few months later. They're the ones rediscovering this old method and realizing that sometimes the simplest, oldest solutions were overlooked not because they didn't work, but because they didn't come with flashy packaging or a marketing budget behind them. It's also worth understanding why this matters more the older we get, beyond just the natural changes in our gums and saliva that we talked about earlier. As we age, gum health becomes connected to more than just our smile. Researchers have spent years studying the link between oral bacteria and overall health. And while I want to be careful not to overstate this, because correlation isn't the same as certainty, there is a growing body of evidence suggesting that chronic gum inflammation may be connected to broader inflammation throughout the body. Your mouth isn't a separate, isolated system. It's connected to everything else, and the bacteria living in unhealthy gums don't necessarily stay contained there. This is part of why dental health has become something doctors increasingly ask about during general checkups, not just something reserved for the dentist chair. Taking care of your gums isn't vanity. It's part of taking care of your whole body, and that's especially true the further along we get in life. There's something deeply comforting, too, in going back to something this simple. In a world full of complicated skincare routines with 15 steps, supplements with ingredients you can barely pronounce, and health advice that seems to change every few months, there's a certain peace in a practice that requires nothing but a spoonful of oil and a few quiet minutes each morning. No subscription, no expensive equipment, no confusing instructions. Just you, a small amount of something natural, and a few minutes of stillness before the day begins. Many people who adopt this habit say it becomes almost meditative, a small pocket of calm they didn't know they needed, tucked into the busiest part of the morning. And unlike so many health trends that fade after a few weeks because they were complicated or expensive to maintain, this one tends to stick, simply because it's so easy to fit into a life that's already full. If you decide to try this yourself, and I genuinely hope you do, start gently. Don't feel like you need to swish for the full 20 minutes on your very first try. Even 5 or 10 minutes is far better than nothing, and you can build up from there as it becomes more natural. Choose an oil that feels right for you. Coconut oil if you enjoy a milder taste. Sesame oil if you want to follow the more traditional route. Do it consistently, ideally every morning, because like most things related to health, the real benefits come from repetition over time, not from doing it once and expecting a miracle. And please, don't treat this as a replacement for your regular dental visits. Think of it instead as reinforcement. An extra layer of care working quietly in the background, supporting everything else you're already doing to protect your smile. If you ever notice persistent bleeding, swelling, loose teeth, or pain that doesn't go away, that's your body asking for professional attention, and no home remedy should ever stand in the way of getting that checked out properly. What's remarkable about this whole story isn't just the science behind why oil pulling works, though that alone is fascinating enough. It's the reminder that sometimes the answers we're searching for aren't hidden in some expensive new product waiting to be invented. Sometimes they're sitting quietly in our own kitchen cabinet, in a practice that people relied on for thousands of years before we ever had a reason to doubt it. Your gums have been trying to tell you something for a long time, through the little signs most of us learn to ignore. A bit of blood here, a bit of sensitivity there. And now you know one simple, ancient way to actually listen. If this video gave you something worth remembering, something worth trying tomorrow morning, do me a favor and give it a like, so more people your age can discover this too. Subscribe if you want more honest, practical health guidance like this. the kind that doesn't rely on scare tactics or empty promises. Just real information that respects your intelligence and your time. And if you know someone, a parent, a sibling, a friend, who's been struggling with their gum health and hasn't found an answer that actually works, share this with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can pass along isn't a product. It's knowledge that's been quietly waiting to be rediscovered.